Today on Inside Politics, a pressure campaign on Pennsylvania Avenue. Donald Trump is about to meet inside the Oval Office with the King of Jordan, trying to convince the key U.S. ally to open up his country to a massive influx of Palestinian refugees who, by the way, don't want to go anywhere. We'll bring you breaking details from the White House meeting. Plus, the president versus the courts. He's publicly daring to defy the co-equal judicial branch of government as multiple federal judges push pause on his plans to dismantle the federal government. And the Constitution is clear. Congress has the power of the purse. So why do many Republicans appear willing to hand it over to the richest man in the world? We'll hear from a key GOP lawmaker this hour. I'm Dana Bash. Let's go behind the headlines and inside politics. You're looking at live pictures from the White House where Donald Trump is about to welcome Jordan's King Abdullah. That's the Eisenhower Executive Office building that you see there. It is the president's first face-to-face meeting with an Arab leader since he took office. And it comes just hours after he refused to rule out cutting aid to Jordan unless the king agrees to take in hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians who would need a home if Trump carries out his far-fetched push to take over Gaza. And we are seeing the king arrive right now. Let's pause and watch.
Mr. President, are you confident the king will back your plan for the Palestinian people? Will you cut off aid to Jordan if he's not on board, Mr. President?
Mr. President, is Saturday still your deadline for Hamas, sir? Sir, is Saturday still your deadline for Hamas? Do you think they'll listen to you?
Are you confident you can get the king on board with your plan for the Palestinian people? Will you cut off aid to Jordan if he doesn't, sir?
Okay, I'm going to bring in Elena Treen, who is at the White House. Elena, we heard some of our fellow journalists asking all the right questions. We didn't hear any answer from the president other than pointing to the king saying he is a great man.
That's exactly right. And I think, of course, Dana, the key question that's going to be at the center of these conversations today between King Abdullah of Jordan and President Donald Trump is going to be about how the president has not only doubled but tripled down repeatedly in the last few days about his plans to, in his words, take over Gaza, to own it, to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. But also, even more importantly for Jordan and Egypt and other Arab nations, is, the question of whether or not the president is going to try to force their hand in having them accept some displaced Gazans if his plan actually moves forward. Now, we did hear the president yesterday in the Oval Office. A reporter asked him if he would consider, refusing aid or, withholding aid from Jordan and Egypt if they do not accept Gazans. Listen to what the president said. I believe we lost that sound, but essentially the president said that he was considering, leaving open the possibility of not giving aid to Jordan and Egypt if they were not to move forward with accepting more Gazans into their country. As you mentioned, Dana, this is something we know that the King of Jordan and his counterparts in the region have flatly rejected, saying that is a non-starter for them. Hopefully, we'll get more answers today after they meet behind closed doors around whether or not there's any more clarity on what that could look like going forward. Dana?
Okay, Elena, thank you so much. You mentioned that President Trump did talk yesterday. We do have the soundbite. Let's listen.
No.
Would the Palestinians have the
big
right to
money
return?
spent. No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better. In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them. Because if they have to return now, it'll be years before you could have it's not habitable. It'll be years before it could happen. I'm talking about starting to build, and I think I could make a deal with Jordan. I think I could make a deal with Egypt.
Would you withhold aid to these countries if they don't agree to take in the Palestinians?
Yeah, maybe. Sure. Why not? I mean, if they don't agree, I would conceivably withhold aid. Yeah.
Here with me is a very talented group of reporters, CNN's Jeff Zeleny, Jackie Kucinich of the Boston Globe, and Laura Barone Lopez of the PBS NewsHour. I mean, if you kind of take a step back, the president has not only made this audacious proposal last week about just not allowing Palestinians back in their land, but now he's meeting with the king of the country next door, which has its own history, very complicated history with Palestinian refugees, not to mention the fact that it has taken in Syrian refugees and others. And it comes on the heels of the threats getting more and more defiant, including and especially what we heard last night, not ruling out saying, okay, I'm going to cut off your aid with Jordan, which Jordan relies on.
They totally rely on it, but we rely on some of that as well. I mean, there's an intelligence sharing agreement, so it's much more complicated than saying we're going to cut off their aid. I mean, that is when you unpack that statement, it is, a significantly more involved. But look, this is a very, the timing of this meeting had been set up a bit in advance, and now it's coming on a time where the president has put the king in a bind a little bit here. But the King Abdullah has been at this a very long time. He's the longest serving leader in the Middle East. So he is not new at this. So I think if there's anyone who can sort of stand up to the president, it might be him. But we shall see. I mean, this is uncharted territory. But a central question hanging over all of this is the White House last week kind of walked back the president's assertion that Palestinians would be permanently removed. And they said, no, temporarily removed. Well, the president doubled down on that again. So that is a very open question and a huge difference. I'm guessing that comes up as well.
I can't help but look at this and harken back to the campaign and wonder what this has to do with the America First push that the president has made his brand, right? The expansion, talking about trying to acquire Canada, talking about Greenland, talking about building in Gaza. It really, when you're talking about, on the other hand, withdrawing all of these workers from USAID from all of these countries. I know that none of this can be put in a neat box, but it does seem incongruent to what we'd heard throughout the campaign about focusing on interests here rather than abroad.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point, Jackie. And also because, this also reminds me of during the campaign when the president said the U.S. was not going to take any Palestinian refugees, was not going to take any Gazan refugees. And instead he's pushing the Palestinians out of their home and attempting to corner Egypt and Jordan to take them. I expect that King Abdullah is going to repeat what the Egyptian leaders have said, and that they are, they so far have remained united on this front, which is that they are not up for this at all. They do not want this to happen, and they have reiterated, support for the two-state deal.
And let me just read something from a think tank called the Atlantic Council. According to former Jordanian Foreign Minister Marwan Moushar, Jordan's strong opposition to accepting Gazans is not an economic security issue, but an identity issue. Jordanians of Palestinian origin, who constitute a majority of Jordan's population, are weary of the kingdom transforming into an alternative Palestinian homeland. Never mind that actually the law of the land in Jordan as of last week, according to the parliament, is that, actually I shouldn't say the law of the land, it's a draft law of the law that they want to be in place in Jordan, that would say that Jordan's official and popular rejection of any plan to displace Palestinians. So he's the king right now behind closed doors is trying to explain to the president what his own, not only sort of reality of the numbers are, but also his political reality is. And then at the same time, we can't forget what is happening across the border with regard to Israel and Gaza, and the fact that Hamas has now said that they are not going to abide by the next phase or the next round of the deal. It's still phase one, returning some hostages. Here's what the president said about that yesterday.
All of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock. I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, I would say all hell is going to break out.
So I get what he's trying to do here, but that is not just drawing a line in the sand. That is like, digging a hole 100 miles deep in the sand. And it's hard to imagine that Hamas is going to go, oh, okay, sure, Mr. President, here are all the hostages back. It would be great.
It sure is. I mean, high noon on Saturday sounds like the OK Corral or something. I mean, that's not what this is, obviously. And then he did go on to say it's Israel's choice, of course, in terms of going ahead with the ceasefire deal. But talking about all hell will break loose, so reporters in the Oval Office asked him what that means. Like, what does retaliation mean? And he didn't really put more meat on the bone there. But all of this makes this meeting today, which is underway right now, even much more fraught and complicated.
Yeah, I also just, if and when he doesn't go through with that, doesn't he look like a paper tiger? I'm not entirely clear about that. Again, I'll have egg on my face if he actually is successful with a comment like that.
Some of this, again, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, or I don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but how much of this is Trump saying something and then policy working to catch up with him. There seems to be a little bit of that on several other fronts as well.
Everybody stand by. With the stroke of a pen comes a clash with the courts. Some judges are swiping left on President Trump's sweeping executive actions. We'll bring you the latest on the legal battles after a short break.
Oh, T, you can't put that right in the dishwasher.
Watch me. With Cascade Platinum Plus, I have upped my dish game. I just